people that love each other do? What do they actually do? Well, let's just name a few. The first one, and you can put a lot of words around this, but the first one I'm going to call attunement because that's a psychological term that actually builds and changes other people's internal states. When when you are attuned to someone, what does that mean? When you're watching a movie, when you're working on a problem, everything else goes away and you're not looking at Netflix or some football game on TV and putting you into the movie. No, you're attuned to the other. You're attuned to what's on the screen. You're engaged, you're focusing. Your internal world is interacting with it. And you're trying to understand the plot. You're trying to understand the characters and what are they going to do next? And what are they going to do? And how does this fit into what happened in the last scene or last week? It's all about them. It's called an other orientation. It's called focus. It's called awareness. It's called emotional intelligence. And it leads to something deep that unlocks love in the other person, or at least unlocks trust and can build a love. And that is it unlocks a feeling of being seen, a feeling of being understood, a feeling that I'm not alone. This other person who says they love me are with me. You know, one of my favorite themes throughout the Bible is that sometimes God doesn't change things. You know, when people would go through hard times or whatever, you look in the Psalms over and over and over, and it says, I mean, things are horrible around them, but the comfort comes from, but God, you're with me. Your presence is here. Because if you ever gone through a loss or known a friend that's gone through a horrible loss, there's really not a lot of words that do anything except, I'm sorry, this is awful. I'm here. That changes things. When things don't change, that changes things as much as they can be changed because the experience the other person is having is changed. That's a big deal that people who love each other do. And a lot of people will say, I love you, but then they don't listen and they don't, tune into the other person's needs and feelings and all of that. So being other oriented, but being more than just being other oriented, we may even be a giving person and totally out of tune with what they actually need. And the love just goes like water off a duck's back. It's not getting in because it doesn't get to the vulnerable internal, receiving areas of their heart. So that's one thing people that love each other do. If you love your teenager, sit down and listen. Say, what's it like to be in your school? What's it like to be in your friend group? What's it like to have to deal with social media all the time? You want a really good one? That's what I used to ask my kids. What's it like to be on the other end of me as your dad? Tell me. I don't have to be there. You do. I don't know. Is it good or does it suck? I mean, maybe both. Tell me. And to be attuned to what their experience is like, that opens up so much, or your spouse or your friends or your coworkers or whoever. So that's one thing that people do that love each other. The other one that I like to mention, and this one I wrote about extensively in my book, Trust, and that is that their orientation is really for the good of the other person, for them. In the Bible, there's a word that's used a lot as grace. A lot of people think grace just means unconditional love. Well, certainly that's an expression of grace, but grace is much more than that. It's God's unmerited. I mean, we don't do anything to create it or make it or deserve it, but it's his favor. Favor is goodness. I favor you. What does it feel like when you're favored? Now, I don't mean in a competitive sense. you're my favorite. Yeah, I like you better than so. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just favor to you. It's just us in the universe. I'm for you. I'm on your team. I got your back. Simplest way, I want what's good for you. You got people in your life like that. You know that their whole orientation is towards your good. A lot of people do business deals all the time. And what they're looking for is what's good for them. And then they have to kind of do what makes the other person happy. That's different than a deal where somebody goes in with an orientation of, I really want this to be good for you as well as me. And I'm talking about being masochistic. It's good for somebody else and you suffer. I'm not talking about that or taking abuse or I'm not, no, no. I'm just talking about a stance that wants the good. Even if somebody is abusive, we can deal with an abusive person in a way with their best interests in mind. Even if you call the cops and have them arrested, I mean, there's a lot of reasons that's the very best thing that could happen a lot of times for that person, much less you, obviously. What's your orientation? Isn't it, don't you just feel amazing when somebody that loves you just does something you didn't ask for? They anticipated some need. So I was thinking about you and I thought this might really be something that would solve that problem for you. This might be something that uh, would help you in that circumstance or whatever it is, that they're for us. This gets into um, the feeling that somebody actually sometimes not hurts themselves, but does something that causes them to sacrifice in some way, to give up something that they might need or like or want for the other person. Another one of my favorite verses is better to give than to receive. And when we feel that in a relationship, people that love each other, sometimes, well, I'd really rather go to dinner there, but no, let's go. I know you love it. I'll be happy. I want this for you. Let's go for it. That's really cool. We feel that. So there's just a couple of things like that. I'm going to throw one more in there. This is one that pervades all of even popular psychology narratives, like on social media and other places, because they deal a lot with narcissism and gaslighting and all that kind of stuff. But all of that stuff gets fueled by a basic stance of defensiveness. When we are in a relationship with someone we love, unless they're getting abused in some way or whatever, but the basic stance, we're not playing defense. And certainly we have to protect ourselves in your heart and your mind and all that. I know that. But in a loving relationship, the basic stance, I'm not playing defense. If you tell me something I did wrong or something that wasn't good for you or didn't feel good or whatever, then my instantaneous response hopefully is not going to be defend against what you're telling me, to gaslight it, reject it, minimize it, deny it, blame it, excuse it, all the different mechanisms like that. It's not going to be defensive. It may be just neutral. I'm listening. But even neutrality is better than defense. Defense is somebody throws a punch, we throw another. Remember what Jesus said about turning the other cheek? Well, we get in a whole topic on that. It's not about masochism and letting people beat you up and all that. But it is an attitude that we, like is referred to later, that we don't let evil overcome us. We overcome evil with good. And one of the ways to do that is to not hit our own launch codes and, and attack the other way in a loving relationship. Don't be defensive. Just listen. Doesn't mean they're right. Sometimes they are. Might be telling you something you need to hear for the relationship. But if we're defensive, we instantly reject it. That's an automatic response in humans, and we have to grow out of that. So that's just a few things. What loving people could do. Try it. See what happens. Now, again, I'm not saying take mistreatment and, put up with bad behavior and all that. I wrote a book called Boundaries. I mean, those are important. You don't want to do that. But I'm talking about what in a loving relationship, love comes from certain actions. And those are pretty good ones.